for Economic Education, where she leads the Education Entrepreneurship Lab and hosts the LiberatED podcast, and she mostly works in the intersection between enterprise and education. Then we have Mr. Alexandre Moreira, who is one of the greatest Brazilian specialists in education rights, the Secretary General of the Education Law Association based in Brussels, and a specialist in homeschooling with authored books on it. We will also have Orso Fer, who is the CEO of Freeth'm, a company committed to building decentralized, self-sufficient towns, and he has over 20 years of leadership experience. And then we have Michael Strong, who is one of the most experienced education innovators from the United States, and he is also the founder and CEO of the Socratic Experience. So firstly, let me just switch to Spanish just to say something. Para los hablantes de español, hay interpretación simultánea. Para oír es la interpretación simultánea, puedes clicar aquí abajo los tres puntitos, clicas en los tres puntitos, tienes un icono que parece el mundo, clicas, dice interpretación y puedes oír el webinario en español. Now that we have our Spanish speakers informed about the simultaneous interpretation, we can start listening to our speakers. So, Mr. Alexander Moreira, I will start for you. So you are a specialist in homeschooling, and I would like you to talk about that, mainly about the intersection between homeschooling and innovation, mainly technological innovation. So how can innovation and new technologies, in your perspective, be beneficial for parents and students who opt for homeschooling?
Thanks for the invitation. It's an honor to be with you, Michael, with you, Kerry. Well, I would say that there's no such thing as homeschooling, first of all, because this word is terrible. I mean, we don't intend to do schooling at home. We don't intend to reproduce schooling at home. And in fact, there's not even home education because we don't intend to do education only at our houses. It's just education, maybe family education. And it's a paradoxical relation between, let me use homeschooling for clarity's sake, between homeschooling and technology, because the aims of education, what education is for, haven't changed much in the last 2000 years, let's say. And they are totally independent from technology. I mean, when we are talking about education, we are talking about human development in brief. And I hope this will never change. We believe in the potential of our children, and we believe that education must be holistic to develop not only the cognitive part, but also the social, emotional, physical, and even the spiritual part of human being. We see human being as integral. So at the same time, we are always using technology, but the essence didn't change. I mean, technology is a tool. It's a very, very useful tool, but we are the masters, and the technology must be only the tool, the instrument for the education of our children. I mean, our choices in technology are between two extremes. We can teach our children to become like zombies, always looking at a screen and addicted to fast-paced content, or we teach them criteria on how to use technology in an efficient and humanistic way. Well, I will give you an example from my house. I have three children, two twin girls, Sarah and Sophie, 10-year-old, and a boy, Alexander, 7-year-old. And they are already hooked on the classics. I mean, I deeply believe that everyone has the human right to read the classics, beginning by Homer. But it's tough for children. So I decided to read the Divine Comedy for them. Every canto, there's 100. And I used ChatGPT and asked it, please adapt the first canto of Hell for 10-year-old children. And it worked very well. I read the 100 cantos for them. And YouTube also, it's a fantastic tool. You know, I talked to my father, who is 8 years old now, and I tell him, Dad, when I was a kid and asked you things and you didn't know, it was hard, but now it's much easier. I can say to my children, let's research together. Let's look for an answer. And maybe we can find a nice video on YouTube explaining well what you're asking. So technology is fantastic for us, but this technology must be curated, must have a criteria. It's not a technology or innovation just for innovation and technology's sake. This is the initial idea.
Thank you very much. So now I'm passing the word to Miss Kerry McDonald. So, Kerry, you mostly work on the intersection between education and enterprise. And I would ask you, how exactly does this intersection work? So what exactly is, let's say, education entrepreneur, and how does that process work? And in your perspective, how can education enterprises be beneficial for the learning process of children?
Yeah, thanks, Beatrice, and thanks so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. So my work really focuses on spotlighting the entrepreneurial parents and teachers who are creating innovative education solutions. People like Michael Strong. I'm thrilled that you have him here to join us to share the experience as an entrepreneur. Creating one of these innovative learning platforms. So, I've crisscrossed the United States interviewing founders of low-cost private schools, micro schools, homeschool collaboratives, learning pods. And it's really just incredible to see the kind of individualized, learner-centered educational settings they're creating. And this movement towards innovative education began, sort of in the first 2 decades of the new millennium, in the 2000s and 2010s. And I documented some of the growth in both homeschooling, microschooling, and similar solutions in my 2019 book. But then when COVID hit and education was disrupted around the world, it really unleashed entrepreneurship and education and innovation in unparalleled ways. And I think, what we started to see beginning in 2020 was the rise of these sort of pandemic pods, as they were known here in the US, which were these spontaneous groups of families getting together to figure out how to continue educating children despite widespread school closures and ongoing remote learning. And many of those pandemic pods evolved into full-fledged micro schools and low-cost private schools. There's a variety of different approaches that today's founders use when they're creating these programs. Some of them operate as state-recognized private schools. Others operate as full-time education programs for homeschoolers. So sort of blending the best of homeschooling and conventional schooling, but really with an intent to focus on the individualized needs of each child. So what does this 10-year-old need at this moment, not what does this fourth grader need? And I think that focus on the individual learner is something that technology, to sort of the earlier discussion, has really enabled to really be capitalized on, because now these education entrepreneurs, these school founders, are able to leverage various digital platforms like Khan Academy, and Zern and IXL, all kinds of different digital technologies to customize learning for each child. So they're really able to meet the child where they're at in terms of mathematics skills, literacy skills, and help them close any gaps kind of in their own way at their own pace. So I'm truly excited by this sort of decentralized bottom-up movement towards creating a marketplace of education options for families, certainly here in the U.S. And it's something that families really want. You know, families are looking for alternatives to a one-size-fits-all conventional classroom. They want the personalization in education for their children that they enjoy in all other parts of their lives, but have not been able to sort of tap into in education for so long. And I think that that's really changing, again, thanks to these school founders, these entrepreneurial educators who are creating these solutions, and again sort of leveraging homeschooling and private education policies in order to do that. We have in the US now about 6% of the overall US K-12 school age population is being homeschooled. A large percentage of those students are attending micro schools, either full-time or part-time. And I think we're going to continue to see that, especially as we have here in the US, the expansion of state-based school choice policies that enable a portion of education funding to follow families to their preferred school or learning environment, enabling families to really opt out of a traditional school for some of these alternatives.
Thank you so much, Kerry. Let me just say something. So I saw that we had a question about the questions. So people who want to ask questions may leave it at the Q&A box, and then speakers will answer them, but a bit after. Okay, so let's pass to the next speaker. So Kerry has mentioned the concept of micro schooling, which is a very innovative concept, and that's amazing because our next speaker has founded its own micro school, and that's what I wanted to talk about next. So Michael, you founded your own micro school, the Socratic Experience, and I would like you to talk a bit about it. So what is this concept of microschooling? How did you create, how did you take the decision of creating your own micro school, and how does it work? How does your micro school work? I would like you to talk about it.
No, thank you. And first, I want to kind of pick up themes from both Alexander and Kerry and orient people. I always like to start that while I love learning, I hate school. And I'm somewhat unusual as a school founder who openly hates school. But part of what I mean by that is the standard model. I think Kerry mentioned or maybe Alexander, it's not about fourth grade math. There's a grammar of school where most schools are run by governments that expect the students all to take the same curriculum in first grade, second grade, third grade, and students are forced to go lockstep all through the same curriculum at the same time. And I think it's a dreadful system that is damaging to many students. Just a data point, in the United States, 75% of high school students are unhappy at school. 2/3 are not engaged in learning. and there's a 30% increase in teen suicides during the school year. I think by any objective standard, it's just a catastrophe, but it's not recognized as a catastrophe. So one of the reasons I start my own schools, I've started many over my life, Socratic Experience the latest, is because school is a catastrophe for so many kids. Maybe it works for 20 or 30%, you know. I think the people who replicate the system at work for them, good for them. But we need something much more personalized and flexible. So I'm a great believer in high agency, personalized education. Personalized, just very trivially, and this goes to the ed tech apps. In math, there are some kids that can do 3 years of math per year, and there are other kids that may only do half a year of math per year. And the great thing about the ed tech math apps is that you can personalize it. It is very difficult. Back in the United States in the 19th century, we had one-room schoolhouses, and you know they did have kids at all different levels, and they managed. But the tech allows it to be much easier. We use something called Math Academy, where kids can really go at their own pace. At the same time, going back to Alexander doing the classics with his kids, one of the things we do is we have Socratic dialogues where all our kids read and discuss a text together. Next Monday, I'm leading a discussion on the Maximes of La Rochefoucauld. And when we discuss things together, the kids love to think and talk about ideas. But again, we're not teaching, we're getting them to articulate their own ideas. And so this goes down to high agency. So by high agency, instead of the school dictating to them what they need to do, we have a basic structure, and within that structure, they get a lot of choice. I actually think the great genius of Montessori, and Montessori was a big influence on my thinking, was to go from education as a top-down curriculum to let's create a learning environment within which children are free to choose things that are of more interest to them. And she had a highly curated environment. This goes back to what Alexander said. You know, I think there are obviously some things on the internet we don't want kids to be doing or watching or seeing. So I'm a big believer in, yes, we curate the environment very carefully, but within the curated environment, give kids considerable freedom. So we have the Socratic discussions, we encourage creative and entrepreneurial projects, we have self-paced math, and the result is that kids are much more enthusiastic because we encourage them to follow their interests. Every child gets a mentor who meets with them one-on-one, and the mentor helps them explore creative and entrepreneurial projects. It helps them figure out how much math they want to do, depending on what their goals are. It helps them with time management, kind of a general person to help increase their agency. How do I help you become the most amazing human being you can be? It's very different from, I'm here to teach you today, and you got to learn the stuff. So it's a huge paradigm shift in what education is. I just want to end with 3 particular student profiles to get a sense for how different it can be. I have one student who is kind of not, you know, maybe a B student at a great public high school in the US. So he was doing okay, but not great. He was only getting about 4 hours of sleep a night because he was busy working on entrepreneurial projects. He left his great public high school, came to us, and now for his junior and senior year, now he is making about $500,000 a year as a digital marketer because his entrepreneurial energy was able to go into things that he was passionate about. And just to riff on marketing, the people who know how to market, all marketing is digital marketing these days. A marketing professor who wrote a book 20, 30 years ago has no clue. The kids, the teenagers, they know how to get eyeballs on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Twitter and, you know, all the things. I can't keep up, you know, unless you're a digital native, you're not going to keep up. So we should encourage them to do that. So he's a rock star. Instead of 4 hours of sleep, B student, he's having an incredible life. A different case, I had a student who had clinical anxiety, and she had to drop out of school in public school, and she went to therapists and psychiatrists and all of this kind of thing. Eventually, she joined us, and instead of having to fail at English classes, I encouraged her to write a book on her experience of going into clinical anxiety and coming out. And she's extremely good at talking about her raw experience, what it felt like to be kind of paralyzed with anxiety, what it felt like not to be able to function for a while, how she kind of climbed back out of it. She's about ready to publish a book, and it will be an amazing book. And why does she have to do mindless language arts credit exercises that don't get her anything, when instead she could be writing a book that shares with the world teenage girls' experience of going into and then coming back out of clinical anxiety? One more case, I've got a student who his dad buys and sells real estate. He was managing a team of 12 virtual assistants last year to identify tax delinquent properties for his dad to buy. And then this year, he fired the virtual assistants and created an AI agent to identify tax delinquent properties for his dad to buy. He's probably going to make a couple $100,000 this year. And in the meantime, he loves math. He loves Math Academy. He did a year of math in 2.5 months. So there's so many cases. I live and breathe in this world where kids who are anxious, depressed, suicidal, or maybe it's just super bright and really bored, you take them out of regular school, one size fits all, ridiculous model. No sane person would create this today. And you provide an environment where they're supported to do amazing things, ed tech where they need the ed tech, go do the thing when they need to go do the thing, human beings that care about them, helping them optimize their agency. And you just get these happy, amazing families. And I want to emphasize the families. There's a lot of misery at homes because the parents are, trying to struggle with the kid to go to school and do your homework and all that. If you flip it around and support the kid in how to have an amazing life, the parents are doing it, the educators are doing that, almost all the family conflict goes away and we have happy, flourishing kids. So I won't rant anymore. I'll let Or be next in line.
Thank you very much, Michael. So now we are going on to the next speaker, Or Sofer. So, Or, you are the CEO of a project called Freeth'm, which is, I hope I'm pronouncing it well, by the way, the Freeth'm project, which is committed to building self-sufficient, decentralized, free towns. So, I will be a bit ambitious on this question. This might be a bit out of the box. So, in a decentralized free town, what would be the ideal education system? Would these concepts of homeschooling, microschooling be the ideal solution? So, how would education work in a decentralized free town?
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you for the invitation. And hello, everyone. Hello, Michael. Well, in what we are willing to do is basically not to guide people into what is the best choice, but to enable multiple choices. We realize that as soon as we go a little bit rural, the options for educations are limited. And in general, according to my personal belief, the governmental education is not the best thing you can get for your kids. So our goal in Freeth'm was to enable different types of education platforms, and give them the space and the community around it, which is, I think, maybe as important, because just having your kids at home and homeschooling them, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine that it's not easy. It's probably like at least a part-time job, if not a full-time job, and having that in in just your own family setting is a little bit difficult, because you do not have the community to support that, and sometimes kids might not have friends around them. So Freeth'm is coming in to basically enable this kind of lifestyle. So whichever kind of education you would like to have for your kids, you can have it in Freeth'm. We will have educational facilities, but we are not going to tell people what's the right thing to do. We're just going to have 5 or 6 different platforms. Just one of them is the Socratic experience, my favorite one. And other ones can be like more technical types of education. Like there is a kids carpentry called Sloyd that we like a lot, and we would like to have them there. Also some music studios and teachers. So a mix between homeschooling options to technical type of education, and also umbrella schools to kind of get the legal part fixed, because in many countries it's a gray area or illegal. In Portugal, where we wish to build the first project, it's a kind of a gray area. They say that it's allowed, but there can be problems. So an umbrella school would help with legalizing, basically, or registering the kids in a way that the government will not come and make problems. So yeah, freedom is basically just about enabling free choice of education. We bring in the best schools that we can find, and we collaborate with them either with the hybrid system or a fully remote system. With the Socratic experience, for example, we are hoping to get to a point where we can do hybrid, so kids can study online and maybe afternoon, or because we're in Europe, we have different time zone to how it works in the US. So yeah, we can fill the gap with offline activities and teachers on site. So yeah, this is the role we're taking.
Thank you very much. By the way, I'm from Portugal, so now I got very curious with the project you are developing there. So I got curious about that. So now let's pass to the audience questions. So the first question comes from We Are Innovation CEO Federico Fernandez. It's directed more at Kelly and Michael. So what do you believe that are the most common limiting beliefs that may stop parents from trying to innovate educational alternatives? I don't know which of you wants to start, but
I'll start, Michael, and then have
Go
you
ahead.
all
chime
right.
in.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think some of those limiting beliefs are subsiding as more and more education options appear. But some of them would be, is this going to work out okay for my kids, right? Parents want what is best for their children, and doing something that's a little bit unconventional, a little bit out of the norm, whether that's homeschooling or choosing a new micro school or low-cost private school, can feel a little bit frightening. I think, though, what we're seeing now is that these network effects that are emerging, certainly here in the US, and especially in states that have robust school choice policies that enable families to really exit a government school for another option, is that parents are feeling more supported, and they're feeling that these alternative options can be even better for their kids. Their kids can be more academically successful and have higher levels of well-being. I thought it was really wonderful, Michael, sharing some of the stories of the students that he's working with. I hear similar stories all the time of kids who might have hated school or refused to go to school. And, sort of dreaded Monday mornings and looked forward to school vacation weeks. And now I hear, constantly these founders and parents and students themselves saying, I get sad on snow days if I can't go to school because it's snowing outside, or if I'm sick and I can't go to school, I'm sad about that, and they look forward to these new schools. I had one founder who runs a Waldorf-inspired micro school in the Philadelphia area in Pennsylvania. And she started her school and decided that she was going to offer potentially doing a year-round school. So some of the parents were saying, we struggle with summertime and finding different summer camps for our kids. Would you consider doing a year-round school? And the founder went to the students and said, what do you think? And the kids squealed in delight. They were so happy that they could go to school all year round. So I think the more that parents realize what is possible with these innovative, individualized educational models, the more eager they are to explore what's available in their own communities. And what I find frequently happens is if these parents can't find what they're looking for in their own communities, they go off and build what they can't find. That's why they become entrepreneurs and they create their own schools and spaces. And many times, more often than not, these schools and spaces fill up very quickly. And very quickly, these school founders have waiting lists and have to think about how to expand to meet the parent demand that they're seeing around them.
And thank you, Kerry. I'll add two things. One is often people believe that they need to replicate school at home. And so I've known a lot of homeschoolers who start by, oh, I'll get all the curriculum. I'll get the social studies curriculum and the math curriculum and language arts curriculum and the science curriculum and everything. And then after, sometimes it's a few months, sometimes it's a few years, they realize most of this is just not necessary, not relevant. And so I've known a lot of homeschoolers that started out very conventionally, and then they realize there's so many other things that are more valuable for their children to be doing than working through standard school curricula. And so I think, it is, I think reading and writing, math are very important, but I would much rather have my kid read for 2 or 3 hours a day than do any language arts curriculum I've ever seen. And history, there's so many cool history books, history videos, so many ways to learn all about history. Would I ever read a history textbook as an adult? No, it's the worst history on earth. So I think the first thing is breaking away from standard school curricula. But then the other thing in terms of limiting belief, I think is status. And people don't like to talk about status, but 30 years ago, to be a homeschooler in the US, you had to be a real weirdo. And even with Montessori schools, 30 years ago, I worked for a great Montessori school in San Antonio, and one of the parents, who is kind of part of the elite in San Antonio, said, "What do I tell my friends?" Because all her friends were sending their kids to the old prestigious schools. She sent her kid to this little weird Montessori hippie school, and she had to kind of justify why this alternative model was good. And I appreciate how honest she was about the status issue. And I think for people who are in countries where it's illegal, I've talked to German families where it's illegal and they're secretly homeschooling. Incredible courage, just incredible courage, maybe crazy courage. But whether it's legal issues or just everybody thinks I'm weird, if you're a pioneer in this, it's really hard. And I think one of the most positive developments in the US is there are increasingly networks. There are networks where it's normalized to homeschool, unschool, learning pods, micro schools, Montessori, Waldorf, Acton. It's becoming a rich ecosystem in the US. I live in Austin, which I think is the world headquarters of alternative school. We've got a more diverse homeschooling, alt school ecosystem than anywhere. And one of the things, going back to the status issue, is it's become normal among the elite tech entrepreneurs to do alternatives. So there are tech billionaires in Austin who have little micro schools in their home, or Joe Lamont's a billionaire who's launched Alpha School, which is growing and expanding. Jeff Sandifer was a wealthy centimillionaire who created the Acton Academies, network of academies. So here in Austin, I think almost every tech person knows somebody. Their children may not go to an alternative school, but they all know somebody whose child does. And so there's an active conversation of, oh, are you keeping them there? Are you going to go there? So it's no longer weird. And I think once we collapse, the weird perception, then we're going to see a flood of interest, first in Austin, and then, as Kerry says, in states with lots of school choice. In Florida and Arizona, we're approaching half of students are no longer going to zoned public schools. So I think there will be a tipping point, crack in the dam, and within a few years, we're going to see a much greater acceptance of alternatives.
Thank you very much. So now we have 2 questions by Alexandre Laia. So one of them is directed to Alexandre Moreira. So one question you've answered, but I would like you to give a few remarks about it. So he asked if you know the work of John Holt and the concept of unschooling, and what's your perspective on it?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, I know the work of John Holt, and it deeply influenced my practice and even my legal theory. And there is something very important here is about the confusion on homeschooling and unschooling as if it were very separate things. And in fact, unschooling is not a separate way of education, but it's an integral part of homeschooling. I mean, we do not intend to repeat what is taught at schools. We do not intend to dismiss the interests, the talents of our children. So we need to be highly adaptive. And this is the unschool flavor that homeschool needs. Of course, we can't just dismiss all curriculum. I mean, as Michael said, the 3 R's continue to be essential and will continue to be essential in the foreseen future. In one word, everyone needs literacy, needs to know how to read and write and to do at least some basic math. But how to do it and how far to go in each one, it will depend a lot in the family and in the children.
Thank you very much. So, Alexandre also asked about this is for whoever who wants to answer. So he also asks if any of the speakers know about Clone Lara School and their project. Kerry, I see that you have written about it on your Forbes column. So if you want to give a few remarks about it.
Sure. Yeah, I put the link to the Forbes article I wrote a couple of years ago about Pat Montgomery, the founder of the Clone Lara School, who was a real champion for expanding homeschooling freedoms in the state of Michigan, where Clone Lara is based, some 30 years ago. It was really her efforts to protect the right of families to educate their children outside of a conventional school that opened the gates for homeschooling freedoms in Michigan and beyond, and also have really set the stage for what we're seeing now with microschools and innovative education models. So Clone Lara is still going strong. They still have their microschool in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but they are probably even more widely known for their online school that has global reach and really focuses on kind of personalized education.
Thank you very much. So we have one more question by our CEO. So to whoever wants to reply, what are the tech trends that make you more optimistic about the future of education? Maybe I will give this time the floor to Or. So you haven't answered any question yet. So what tech trends may make you more optimistic about the future of education?
Well, I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that. The other people on the panel are much more up to date than me here. So I suggest to move the question forward.
I'll pick it up. I would say
Okay.
AI gets a lot of attention, and I think a little bit too much attention. Of course, AI is a great thing. Of course, of course, of course, of course. But I see it as in continuity with first reading and then radio and then film and then computers and the internet and now AI. I think my ultimate goal as an educator is to develop autodidacts, and the content of learning is becoming a commodity. Just go to the AI, you can type any question in and get a response from AI that may not be perfect, but it's pretty good. And the way I think of that is for high agency people, AI is going to be amazing. But if you are passive, maybe not so much. And so I think the way I look at it is, in one sense, AI is an incredible way to accelerate education and create broaden educational access. But I would add, if and only if we create high agency learning environments where young people are habituated into asking questions, taking initiative, that sort of thing, And I think that's a more fundamentally human process. So yes, AI is going to transform education for those who ask questions and take initiative. And it will just increase the addictiveness of tech for people who don't, thus leaving urgency on the human side of education precisely because AI is accelerating all trends.
Yeah, I would just add, I think technology and especially these new digital learning tools just enable customization in education at a level that we've never been able to enjoy before. And that's a real win for families and for founders of these new schools and spaces, that now families are really able to find a school or a micro school or a learning environment that is aligned with their values and viewpoints, and that has a curriculum and an approach that that is also aligned with those values and viewpoints. So you look at, again, to use an example of Clonlara, an online secular program that emphasizes, personalization, that could be appealing for some families and some founders who might use that kind of platform. For others, they might want a faith-based model or faith-based curriculum. They might want Montessori or Waldorf or a classical educational model or a fusion, sort of a hybrid of all kinds of different curriculum and educational approaches, but they're really able to tailor that curriculum to the needs of each individual child and have that curriculum reflect their own distinct values and viewpoints. And I think that that's the other sort of piece of this too. I talk to founders of really high tech enabled AI powered micro schools who are really all in on technology and see that as something that's useful and valuable for kids and for families. And then I'll see, other founders who are creating schools like forest schools or other nature-based programs who are fully rejecting screens and technology. And again, what's great about this emerging education marketplace is that families are able to make choices based on what they value. So families that want, AI and a high tech focus in their children's schools are able to increasingly find a space that embraces that. And for the families who want more low tech or nature-based, play-based programs without screens, they're able to find that too. So we're really, again, starting to see that personalization and customization in education that we enjoy everywhere else.
Thank you very much. Alessandra, do you want to give some remarks on the topic?
I would like just to emphasize what I said earlier, that we need to be very careful about technology. First of all comes ethics, comes our values, and technology use must have criteria. We have to to be the curators for our children, and inside this, how can I say, this safe space, they can choose everything. But the most important thing, technology will help us a lot, will help us to customize the education of our children, to access tons of good materials. But again, it's just a tool, and we need to know how to use this tool.
Actually, just to riff on that a little bit, I would say one of the things that I am excited about, there's a platform called recess.gg, which is just starting out. But I think the opportunity to connect to people around the world is absolutely an incredible part of technology. And there are bad people out there, and so it's tricky. I think curation is actually one of the underappreciated themes of education going forward. Kerry's been emphasizing different values and cultures and everything, and all that's true. And just the issue of how to have kids be safe and respectful towards each other. A lot of kids are, but if you go to 4chan, it's a horrible place. And parts of Reddit are pretty horrible places. And so on the one hand, we want kids to have access to all the amazing things out there. At the same time, we don't want them to be, damaged in various ways by all the bad things. And so I mentioned recess.gg because they're using AI as a curation tool where it can start to help kids in one sense be free to connect while also ensuring that the connections are safe. So even on their platform, they monitor, without spying on the kids, they monitor communications for, say, bullying. And so if kids are doing private messaging, direct messaging that's bullying, it gets flagged. And so I think, I'm very big on freedom, and also we need to have safety and well-being at scale. And so I'm very interested in ways to use AI to help get both safety and well-being at scale while also allowing freedom at scale. And I think that's an underappreciated direction.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so before we finish our webinar, so we've talked here about topics as unschooling and the parents' beliefs on education. So I would just ask any of the speakers if there are any remarks on these topics you would like to make, anything you would like to say. No remarks?
So I'll hop in. So I would say
Okay.
one of the biggest things is alignment between parents. I think when parents make this sort of leap, if, say, the mother and father are not on the same page, then there can be, you jerk the kid this way, jerk the kid that way, that sort of thing. And it's normal for people to have different beliefs. But just, having started many alternative schools, I would say a lot of alternative schools fail if the founders all start with, oh, we're going to do this new different thing. And 2 or 3 years in, it turns out they had very different visions of what the new different thing was. So even parents doing this at home, they should have a conversation about what are our goals and priorities. I think there's no one right way to educate. I think really when you get into thinking about educating your child, ultimately it gets into what are your lifelong values. So not just say cultural, religious, moral beliefs, but is it important for my kid to be a worldly success or not? Is their happiness important? Is citizenship important? Is material success important? Do you want them to treat people decently? There's so many issues. Ultimately, we're going back to, as Alexander said, human development. So ultimately, parents need to think broadly about what kind of human, and it can be intimidating, but it's also exciting. And so parents need to be aligned in terms of if the child is doing this or that, what, especially if you have a lot of freedom, when and where might we kind of curate the environment differently, or might we insist on something? And the more the parents can be aligned in advance, then the less likely they're going to get into awkward conversations down the road. So I encourage parents, I'm actually going to lead a session for some families of just 6 hours. What are your priorities? What do you care about? What counts as great education? What is not, and so forth. And so as they go on this adventure, they're all enjoying the adventure because they're going in the same direction.
Thank you. And any closing remarks? Does anyone have any closing remarks you would like to share?
Yes, I just would like to add to that in the end, the most fundamental thing is trust. You have to trust yourself as a parent, and you have to trust your children to listen to your children. And as Michael said, most of the time, parents are not clear about their values and their goals. And they have to believe, every parent needs to believe that they are able to establish goals, to clarify their vision, to have a family vision. This is what makes the whole difference. And parents can stop delegating the future of their kids to third parties who don't care about their children.
All right, Kerry?
Yeah, and I'll just end, Beatrice, by saying, I've been involved in education policy for 20 years, and I've never been more excited or optimistic than I am right now, because I really do feel like we are moving from an education system defined by standardization and stagnation to one that's increasingly characterized by individualization and innovation. And that's largely happening because of entrepreneurship and parent empowerment and policies that enable more and more families to exit compulsory government school assignment for some of these other options. So I see this continuing. I think that we will see more and more parents excited by the possibilities for their children's education, demanding more of these options, and then more entrepreneurs creating these schools and spaces that families want.
Now, I
Thank
want
you.
to add,
Yeah.
I want to add that I see this movement as thousands of entrepreneurs of happiness and well-being coming into existence. And I think the damage caused by traditional schooling is much greater than anybody imagines. I mentioned in early response, read John Holt, read Ivan Illich, read John Taylor Gatto, all of them in different ways, but complementary ways, talk about how damaging traditional schooling is. And I think, again, as tech accelerates, the damage from traditional schooling is becoming greater and greater. Give you one example. A few years ago, I wrote an article, are public schools causing an epidemic of mental illness? And of course, my answer is yes, and I still think that. Social media gets credited with causing, anxiety, depression, suicide, mental illness. And I think that's because if students don't have the internal sense of direction and wherewithal and confidence and so forth, then they're prey to all of these other addictive technologies and behaviors. Online gambling is a thing, so forth. So if we can give the next generation of young people a sense of purpose and confidence, we'll come up with a fundamentally different world, a golden age. Give you one anecdote. After I published my article on Are Public Schools Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness, somebody reached out to me and he said every day when he was in school, he pictured putting a gun in his mouth and blowing his brains out. He said as soon as he graduated from high school, he quit having that vision and he went on. He's now in his 20s. He is working as an engineer for Google. He's raising a family. He's happy and well. Give you another one. I knew a girl who every morning before she went to school, she would pass by the kitchen knives and consider slitting her wrists because she felt stupid. She's now a successful student in a liberal arts college in the US, having a wonderful, vibrant life. I think that so many social dysfunctions are indirectly related to this lack of supporting our children to thrive. And so I encourage everybody, it's tough, especially if you're in countries that are less supportive, if you're the first person in your community, if your parents think you're wacko and you're going to destroy your kids. And all these things, by the way, I really mean encourage because there are some people, some families that are like, no, don't do this to your kids. Go back to regular school. So a huge appreciation. I think we have to, as a movement, we have to support the people who are doing the right thing. Every time I get a call with a mom and she says, the light's going out of my kid's eyes. I'm wondering if I should change schools. I say, you are a hero. You are a hero. You are caring about what your child needs. And so I think the moral support of this issue is huge. We have a moral campaign to transform education and spread happiness and well-being for the next generation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this webinar, for the speakers, for this amazing conversation and remarks. So now we are going to close the webinar and bye. For the audience, just one thing, and for the speakers as well. This webinar will be recorded. It will be available at We Are Innovations YouTube. So if you want to rewatch it, if you want to send it to someone, the recording will be available. And we hope to see you next time in the next We Are Innovation and Fundación Bases webinar. And thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.